Hi everybody, welcome to the show. Hello everyone, welcome back to Raising A to Z, this YouTube channel all about homeschooling. My name is Amanda. I am a teacher turned homeschool mom. Today I'm talking about self-care for homeschooling parents. Over the last, it feels like maybe the last decade, self-care and mental health has really come into the forefront in our society, and taking care of yourself has become more and more important. And today I'm going to talk about self-care specifically for homeschooling parents and what that might look like for you guys. Before I jump into that, why don't you take a second to subscribe and click the bell so you get notifications every time we put out one of these cool videos. So self-care, I think for homeschooling parents is vital. I think self-care for anyone is vital. Everyone needs to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. But when you are in charge of everything in your home as the homeschooling parent, you're often in charge of not just maintaining your home, but you're in charge of keeping your kids alive, like healthy, fed, taken care of, right? But then you're also in charge of their education. That can be a really big mental and emotional load for someone to carry. And so, I think we really, as homeschool parents, really need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. There's that saying that you can't pour from an empty cup, and I think that really applies, especially when you're homeschooling. If you are tired and exhausted and cranky and, having what we call hangry moments, because I get those, you can't really be the best, most effective homeschooling parent that you can be. And when you're with your kids all the time, they have that extra time to push your buttons and to drive you nuts, and you have that extra time to do things that maybe you weren't really happy about. So I think that to be the best homeschooling parent that you can be, you really need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And I think it's also really great for your kids to see you taking care of yourself. It's good for your physical, mental, emotional well-being. We all agree on that. But I think it's so important for kids to see what real self-care looks like. Especially we grew up in a world where self-care was not spoken about like it is today. I don't really remember my mom doing all the things that we consider self-care growing up. That just wasn't something that people actively talked about. You had your few things here and there, but in terms of making it a routine of making sure you're taking care of your mental health was not something that people actively spoke about. So I think it's great for us as homeschooling parents to teach our kids what self-care is and how that can look different through different times of the day, different times of the month and the year, and making sure that we're actually really taking care of ourselves and showing our kids how one day they can take care of themselves. I find there's two categories of self-care. There's the pretty stuff and the not so pretty stuff. Especially for moms, I find there's a big emphasis on the pretty self-care. So getting your nails done, your hair done, going for a massage, putting your makeup on, all the things that are pretty. I think and there's nothing wrong with that. I think those are great things. I personally love to get my hair done. I get it done maybe once or twice a year. It's just the way my hair is. I love it. I love having my toenails painted. That's a weird thing. Fingernails can care less, but my toenails being painted makes me feel like $1 million. Don't ask me why. I just do. I think there's something really great about those pretty types of self-care. They're great. They have their place. It makes us feel good and pretty, and I love it. I do. I really do. But I think sometimes a lot of people forget that self-care isn't always pretty. And so I'm going to talk about a couple other things that as homeschooling parents, we really need to, maybe put a little bit more emphasis in. Because I think maybe they're almost more important than the pretty stuff. The pretty stuff is fun. It's nice. It's really good for you. But I think some of the other less pretty self-care options are probably even better. So we have our health area of self-care. These are the things that we do to keep ourselves healthy. These are the things that we need to pay attention to make sure that we are not run down and sick and exhausted all the time. And so these are things like making sure we're getting enough sleep. I'm a big sleeper. I need extra sleep. I've learned that if I don't get a minimum of 8 hours, I'm going to be sick. It's just the way my body is. It's the way it's always been. I need my sleep. There's nothing wrong with that, but I also need to know as a parent that I need to prioritize getting enough sleep and making sure that sometimes I go to bed earlier than I would want to go to bed. I'd love to stay up a little bit later and do things once my kids are asleep, but sometimes I have to kind of force myself to go to sleep even though I have other things I'd rather be doing. Eating nutritious food is an important thing. Like, you can't live off of Kraft dinner. As much as that is delicious, and I really do enjoy it, we can't live off of Kraft dinner. We have to, make sure that we are feeding and nourishing ourselves and our bodies, that we're making sure that we're drinking enough water, that we're getting the vitamins and minerals that we need. Those are all important parts of self-care. Getting some exercise, making sure that you're getting outdoors on a regular basis. Those are all things that we need to do to make sure that our physical bodies, that our health is at the best that it can be. The thing that I really suck at when it comes to health is booking appointments. I don't like the doctors, I don't like the dentists. I'm a little bit phobic of needles and medical stuff. And so making a point for myself to book those things and to go and get my teeth cleaned, which I hate. Going to the doctors, getting blood work if it's needed, doing all those things are not my favorite. They're nothing. In fact, they're probably the things I hate the most in the world, but it's things that we need to do that are good for our health. We need to make sure that we're getting ourselves taken care of and seeing that our physical health is, taken care of, because you really can't homeschool off the couch forever. Yes, I have homeschooled on the couch, not feeling great. It works. You do it for short term, but you can't do it laying on the couch forever. It's exhausting, and it's just not most effective that you can be. So we have to take care of ourselves. Relationships. I think so many homeschool parents forget about making time for relationships. I'm talking about all kinds of relationships with adults. Yes, we love our kids, we love connecting with them, we love spending time with them, but as a homeschool mom, I spend pretty much 24/7 with my kids. I'm with them all the time. I'm talking about connecting as an adult with another adult, right? So I think it's really important that we make a point of scheduling time to visit a friend, to have coffee with them, to sit down and make that phone call and call your mom or your dad and talk to them. Those are so important. Connecting with other homeschool parents, that's a great option. One of the things that I've been doing recently is I meet up with my sister-in-law at the park, and we go, the kids take off, they run around the park and enjoy themselves, and she and I get to just sit down and talk about adult things. We talk about, the car that we have, and she's getting a new car, and we talk about, the kids teething and what worked for you, and it's all different. We just get to have conversations that are for adults. They're not me explaining multiplication again, right? It's having adult conversations and having, your humanness connect with another human. I think it's so important to connect with other adults, especially when you are with kids all the day. Even as teachers, I think a lot of teachers forget to talk to other adults on a regular basis. And if you're in a relationship, you want to make sure you're making time for that relationship, scheduling date night. I know right now in this craziness, going out is very difficult, but having a routine where on a certain day that you guys just sit down and hang out on the couch and watch a show together, or you sit down and you can play a game or something where you're connecting with your partner and your spouse. And so that's kind of what we've been doing Friday nights. Movie night, after the kids go to bed, we watch movies, and that's what we've been enjoying. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're making a point of connecting with your partner. Another idea that is kind of a relationship partner thing, but it's kind of like the doctors, it's having those big conversations. And sometimes it's just nice if you kind of make it like a date night and sit down and have kind of those more difficult, more awkward conversations over a bowl of popcorn and a glass of wine. You know what I mean? Talk about your budget and your 5-year goals, or should we buy another car, or have those kind of conversations and make them kind of like your date night. They're not necessarily your favorite conversations. I never love sitting down to do our budget, but it's something that we need to do, and it helps us financially and mentally long term. So again, self-care isn't pretty. It's not always enjoyable even, but it's important. Organizational things, I think, are so important for self-care. I think so many people think of what they do for themselves, for their bodies. They think about what they do connecting with people, but I think a lot of people don't realize how much putting a little bit of effort into organization and getting things organized really helps your mental health, and how it really helps you just flow through your day better. And that's self-care. That's kind of part of what we want to do, is when we're taking care of ourselves, making our lives as efficient and as easy and as relaxing as possible, and putting some effort into organization can really do that for you. So some things that you can do if you're struggling with it, or that are really self-care organizational type things: setting a budget, figuring out your budget, how you're gonna manage your money. That's super important, especially, you know, like I said, we wanna take care of ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically. We wanna take care of ourselves financially. Financial problems can lead to a lot of stress, and that's not good for us. So set a budget, figure out your budget, and, you know, work within that. Meal planning and making a grocery list. Not fancy, but super important. By having a meal plan, I know what meals we're having. I can make a great grocery list that has everything I need. I can check that I have all the ingredients, which means that I'm not running out of stuff. I'm not running to the store mid-meal because I don't have an ingredient that I desperately needed. It means that I'm prioritizing good, healthy food for my family and for myself. So making a meal plan that is gonna work for your family and that is going to make grocery shopping easier and more effective and efficient, that's super great self-care. I am also a big believer that a great routine is essential to self-care. Whether you wanna call it a routine or a rhythm or whatever your plan for your day and your week is, I think having a routine takes all of the guesswork out of what's gonna happen, and you just have a much easier flow, and you get into a much easier flow. And so I think having and establishing a great routine is essential. Writing to-do lists. I'm a huge list maker. Always have been. I love a good list. I think that having a really good working to-do list is essential. So how I do my to-do list, I write down every single thing that I'm going to do that day. I write down meals. I'm going to write down that I empty the dishwasher. I'm going to write down that we're going to homeschool. I'm going to write down everything that we are going to do that day. Because I find a lot of people make to-do lists and they're completely unrealistic because they've forgotten to do things like, oh, I need an hour to make dinner, and we're going to do homeschooling for an hour in the morning. And so then you're missing blocks of time, huge blocks of time. Because if you add in, you know, half an hour at lunch, an hour at dinner, an hour in the morning for homeschooling, you just taken out like 2.5 hours of your day that you didn't have accounted for kind of in your to-do list. So I think that making sure that you're putting things like that on your to-do list are super important. A, you get to check them off and you feel really good as you're like checking things off on your list. But B, it also makes sure that your lists are really realistic. I aim for like 10 to 12 things on my list for a day. That includes breakfast, lunch, dinner, emptying the dishwasher, homeschooling. That's right there, it's like 5. So that by the end of the day, I've completed pretty much everything on my list. It's not unrealistic, but I'm also not overly stressed about it. You know what I mean? Like it's reasonable, it's doable by the end of the day. And I think that's important, that having a good working to-do list and making it doable and realistic is great self-care. Cleaning your space is a fantastic type of self-care. And I'm not just talking about like cleaning. Obviously we need to clean our homes, we need to clean the bathrooms and sweep the floors and all of that. But sometimes just doing like a little reorganizing in, you know, whether it is your makeup bag or your bedside table or your couch area, which is where I do like 90% of my office work, is sitting on the couch so I have like a thing of pens and a pile of papers. Taking like 5 minutes and tidying those up can be great self-care, because then all of a sudden your space is more manageable, it's more relaxing, and you can actually do what you need to do in it. So, you know, pick a space. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed and a little stressed, pick a space, set the timer for 5 minutes, and tidy it up. It's great self-care, and then you feel like you've accomplished something. And like I said, when I was talking about the to-do list, I am a big believer of kind of planning out your time. I think that's obvious when we talked about the to-do list. I'm a big believer in planning your time. Some people like to plan a day, some people like to plan their week. I'm pretty much like a week person. I don't necessarily know 100% what's happening every day, but I kind of have a general plan of what's going to happen. That way when I wake up in the morning, I'm not going like, okay, what are we doing today? What's going to happen? Like, I've taken the time, usually on like a Friday or Saturday, taken about half an hour, sat down and thought about, you know, I do my meal planning. I think about what activities we have, where we're going to be going, what places we have to be at, appointments and such. And I figure out what my week is going to look like. And I think giving yourself some time to kind of like mentally set up what the big things in your week are going to be, super great self-care, but it also gives you, like I said, it frees up some mental space. And I think that's, you know, fantastic. The next one is me time. I think having me time is so important, especially if you are a little bit more introverted like me. When you're with people 24/7, it starts to really deplete your energy and like your emotional energy load. And so getting some time alone is super important for me as an introvert, but I think it's also important for pretty much every human being out there, especially if you have young kids. So first thing I always say is great self-care is run errands by yourself if possible. Get a babysitter, go in the evening when your partner is home, go on the weekend, like find a time in your week where you can get errands done by yourself. For me, it's getting groceries. I go get groceries by myself. We go to the grocery store, it's about 40 minutes away, the one that we go to most. And I go there, I get my groceries, I get my Starbucks, I come home, I've gone about a little over 2 hours. Does that ever fill my bucket? Like, I just need that time. Another thing that I think is really great for me time, I do take a bath every now and then. Just lock the kids out, have some time alone in the bath. I know that's kind of pretty and trendy, but like sometimes just having that alone time by yourself is so important. I usually prop up the iPad or I read and just like chill out. It's really important. Another thing that I like to do is like I like to invest some of my time into my hobbies. So some of our hobbies that I like to do, I have a thing for reading. I love to read. I love to, right now I'm really into houseplants. So I've been really taking care and growing and propagating plants, like, and I think that is great to A, for myself because I get to have a hobby, and B, my kids get to see me doing something that I love. And I think that's sometimes that what we forget is when we're taking care of ourselves, our kids are learning things with us and from us, and learning to have hobbies and doing our hobbies in front of them and say like, yo, you guys are playing, I'm having a time to read a chapter of my book. That is so great for them to see that, and it's also great for you, right? Another thing I've been doing a lot lately that, well, not so much now that it's spring, but throughout the winter, I am big into making sure that your space is warm and inviting. So for me, it's candles. I'm all about the candles all winter long, just plain unscented candles, but they just add so much like warmth and ambiance, especially since we live in Canada and it's cold, a lot of like really cold. So I find like having some candles when I sit down to read a book and lighting a candle makes a huge difference, right? Having a great blanket to cuddle up in makes a huge difference. It's the little things that when you go to have some time or go to do something, it just make your space feel more enjoyable for you. And then lastly, you know, it's okay to treat yourself to something every now and then. Like I said, I treat myself to Starbucks every time I get errands. Another thing that I often treat myself to is either a good notebook. I have a specific brand I really like that I treat myself to, or pens. I have a weird thing for pens. I really have specific types of pens that I really love. And treating myself to some pens is great for my self-care. It makes me happy. Having a little treat makes you happy. It makes you feel good about yourself. You enjoy using it. And every time you go to use it, you feel better, right? It just gives you that little like boost, right? So find little ways that you can treat yourself, whether it's a lip balm, whether it's your favorite chocolate bar, whether it's a bath bomb, candle, a new houseplant. Don't tell Stefan. There's lots of ways that you can treat yourself. And so I think those are all great things that you can do for yourself. Self-care is super important. It is important for everyone, but especially when you are the primary caregiver and educator of your kids, I think it's doubly important. Like I said, you can't pour out of an empty cup. If you are exhausted and tired, you're not going to be an effective parent, you're not going to be an effective teacher. And so I think making sure that we are taking care of ourselves really is the best thing that we can do for ourselves and for our kids. If you like this video and other videos like it, click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications. If you want to see what we do kind of on a regular basis, what I do for self-care, what the kids are doing and running around and learning, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok and see all those kind of details and updates on a regular basis. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later.